Can you imagine renting your car out on Turo, making good bread, and then one day all of a sudden the bank just sends a tow truck out to come collect your baby, to come repo it straight off of the streets? Well, that's exactly what's happening to some hosts out there who financed their cars and decided to rent those financed cars out on Turo. So if you finance some of your cars in your Turo fleet, make sure you watch this entire video so I can tell you exactly what banks are coming to repo those cars and exactly how you can avoid it. Let's get to it. So if you haven't heard already, there's a whole bunch of buzz in the Turo community about certain banks sending out tow trucks to come repo cars that are financed and put out on the Turo platform. Of course, this is a crazy update and it could affect a lot of Turo hosts. I mean, just think about it. If you've built your fleet up through financed vehicles, this one update could literally crush your entire Turo business. Not to mention a lot of the other negative effects it could have on you as well. Having a car repoed that's financed under your name could have disastrous effects on your credit. It could not only drop your score hundreds of points, but it'll make it a lot more harder to try to get these cars in your name moving through the future. Not to mention it could be a horrible experience if this were to occur during a rental. Could you imagine that? Your car is out on a rental with a guest and then all of a sudden, then they hit you up saying they can't find the car. Lo and behold, you do your research, now you find out the bank actually came and took the car. That's crazy. I mean, what do you expect your guest to do? What are you going to do? And of course that guest is going to report this back to Turo, and this could really ruin your ratings and set you up for failure in the future. Now there is a reason why this is happening. Remember, Turo is a peer-to-peer car sharing platform, which means essentially it's just people renting out their cars, their personal cars, to other people. When these people who own these cars are financing them through the bank, they're usually signing contracts that hold them to certain terms when doing business with this bank. One of the biggest terms or clauses in these contracts can be that there's no subleasing or additional renting of the car if the bank finances it to you. Now, Turo is peer-to-peer, so this technically is in violation of your contract if you're personally financing these cars and renting them out on Turo. The bank does have a valid reason or cause to come repo that car if they find out that you're renting it out on Turo. Now, with that being said, it's hard to narrow down exactly how these banks are finding out your cars are listed on Turo, but some good ideas are probably the VIN number. So you have to list your VIN number when you list your car, and you can technically, if you know the car, you can find out the VIN and match them up, and that may be a way that the bank is finding out. Now, before we talk about what bank is actually out here repoing Turo cars, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel because it'll help get this information out to more bag chasers like yourself and push the channel throughout the YouTube algorithm. Now, time to talk about what bank is actually going crazy right now. When it comes to the recent reports of Turo cars getting repoed, it actually is stemming from Ally Financial. So a lot of people who did personal financing through Ally Financial, that is the main bank that's coming out and taking these cars straight off the street once they learn that it's being used on Turo. It seems that they're targeting personally financed vehicles, which is a little different than how I recommend building your fleet, which is why we use commercial financing. But for the purposes of this video, I want you guys to understand that Ally Financial is coming after personally financed vehicles. So what they're doing is essentially researching the Turo platform to see if any of their vehicles are on it. And once they find their vehicles on Turo, they're literally sending out warning letters to the owners of the vehicle. So I've heard with the warning letters, you're usually getting 1 to 2 warnings. And then after that, if you don't respond, they're sending out the repo man. But as of the last week or two, I've actually heard that they're starting to repo vehicles without any warning letter. So just take heed, if you're doing banking or if you're doing car leases, car financing with Ally Financial, they do have the right and are starting to come out and take and repo these vehicles without any warning letter. As of now, Ally Financial is the only bank that I'm hearing is starting to do this repo action. So it's going to be interesting to see if a lot of these other financial institutions who are giving out a lot of loans for auto vehicles in the last 1 to 2 years are going to start cracking more down on Turo hosts. Now, in my personal opinion, this situation is really tough because even when I think about myself, when I first started out on my Turo journey, I actually started out with a car that was in my personal name as well. But with that being said, you as the consumer, you as the Turo host and the person who signs the contract, you have to be aware of the risk and the things that you're signing and going into these deals. Now at this point, I actually don't have any more cars in my personal name. Every vehicle in my fleet that is financed, I have done with commercial financing, and all those cars are in my business name. So that's kind of the key to this is as you start to get more information, as you tap into resources like myself, you start to learn these things. And as you start to learn, I want you to apply these principles and start getting these cars out your personal name. If you're going to have a note on your car, hands down, commercial financing is the best way to go about it when it comes to getting cars for Turo. And all commercial financing really is doing the same type of deal where a bank is going to loan you the money for a car, but they're doing it all in your business name. Everything that they run is going to be based on your business. All the contracts that you sign are going to be under your business name. And really, most of that responsibility falls to your business. So when it comes to these contracts, when it comes to doing things, you're not being held personally liable. It's all essentially liable to the business. Now, another thing is when you're doing commercial financing, these banks and these financial institutions know that you're going to be using the vehicle for more commercial use or more business use. So in a lot of these contracts, they might not have the same clauses. They might not have the same terms and stipulations as if you were doing it in your personal name. If you are interested in the deep dive into that material, make sure you check out the description below where I'll drop a link exactly to the Fleet Acquisition Masterclass. Now, as we're on the topic of commercial financing, I do want to give you some more gems just on the banks that I use and I'm familiar with that haven't started repoing cars and do a lot of commercial financing deals. Very first bank and probably my favorite bank that I use when doing commercial financing deals is Bank of America. Bank of America has been a really popular bank in the last 1 to 2 years because people have gotten a lot of success in doing commercial financing, not just with one car, but actually up to 4 cars at once with one inquiry when it comes to Bank of America. But there's also other institutions, and my number 2 is probably going to be Navy Fed. Navy Fed Credit Union is who I do most of my banking with. They're really popular for giving high limits, not being too strict on lower credit scores, and as of recently, they've been very popular with doing more auto loan deals as well that other hosts are actually using to go get cars for Turo. And up to this point, I haven't heard about Navy Fed repoing any cars or searching databases for cars being used on Turo. Now, another option you have is straight to the dealership commercial financing. What this is different than going to a bank or credit union before you get your pre-approval, but actually going right to the car dealership. Some of the most popular dealerships that do direct commercial financing are going to be Tesla, Ford, Mercedes-Benz, and Chevy. But all this is essentially going directly to the dealer and letting them know that you want to do commercial financing and buy the car in your business name rather than your personal name. And going into these dealerships, a lot of those front up salesmen, they're not going to know about commercial financing. They're used to doing personal financing, and doing deals in a business name may be a bit new to them. So make sure that you call before you ask about commercial financing. Make sure that they're familiar with it, and if you need to, you can always speak to a supervisor or the financing manager. Now, all of this boils down to one of the biggest debates when it comes to Turo. What's the best type of car? A finance car, a car that you can finance straight from a dealership, or a car that you have to pay cash outright for but you own? For me, it all depends on the situation and what your long-term goals are. You have to understand that a lot of debt can be dangerous, and if you start to over leverage yourself with a lot of car notes or car notes that are just high, you can run into trouble during slow seasons, or if anything happens to Turo, you're still responsible for those car notes, and if that money's not coming in, you can be stuck. Now, this is where a positive comes in when owning your cars outright, because even though it takes a little bit more cash up front, it doesn't really matter how the Turo or Hire Car or other car sharing platforms do. You're not going to be indebted for a monthly car note. Now, the flip side is if you do want to own these cars outright, it's going to take you upfront money, right? So even if the car is only $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000, that can be a lot of money to spend on a car, especially if it's your first car on the Turo platform. This is where a lot of Turo hosts find that financing cars can be a lot easier because you can get into these cars with no money down. You don't have to shove out a lot of money up front, and you can just leverage the car on the back end. Once it starts making money, you can pay off the note as you take in rental income monthly. And essentially, you get these cars for free. But as I said, this is a dangerous game to play if you get too many cars or over leverage yourself, because the moment the money stops coming in, it's going to get tight for you. So this brings us to my golden rule for Turo when it comes to adding cars to your fleet. I call it my 3-to-1 rule, and it's something I want you to start applying as you get more and more experience with the Turo platform. Essentially what it means is for every 1 luxury or finance car you have in your fleet, I want you to have 3 economy cash outright cars that can support it. What this does is give you a little bit more support that if anything ever happens to those finance cars, if the season gets slow and you can't pay that note, you have some cash cars that you can rely on that'll bring you income that you don't don't have to pay a note out of that can still keep you afloat. So as you start to build your fleet, just make sure you remember my 3-to-1 golden rule. So bag chaser, if you're still here with me in this video and you're more interested in learning about how to buy these cars in your business name, drop me some comments. Let me know if that's a video I should drop in the future, because I definitely got a lot of gems to how to get these cars in your business name, how to use commercial financing, and check out that fleet acquisition masterclass. But if you want to learn more about my opinion on what is the actual best car that you can run out on Turo, make sure you check out this next video where I explain it in depth.